Welcome to Straight from the Gavel. I'm your host, Dave Barber, coming to you this day from the House Lounge at the Rhode Island State House. Each and every day at this time, we like to visit with a member of the General Assembly and discuss some of the things they have been working on and its impact on you, the Rhode Island citizen. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome a woman who's making her first appearance here on Straight from the Gavel from South Kingstown, the Honorable State Representative Teresa Tanzi. Representative, it's great to see you.
I appreciate that. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
I know we've talked to you before on our Capital Spotlight segments, and this is your first time on this particular show. And one of the things we like to do, especially lately, we've had a number of freshman representatives on the telecast, and we like to start by just allowing you to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. Give us a little background about you, yourself, your family, your profession, etc.
Thank you. I am a freshman rep, as you said, so this is my second year that we're just wrapping up on. I live in South Kingstown with my husband and daughter. I was a public policy student at Brown University, spent some time at URI prior to that, so I've had some schooling here in Rhode Island. And originally my family is from New Jersey. I met my husband when we were living out in Utah, moved out here, and it's been 12 years. We're coming up at the end of this month on being in Rhode Island for 12 years. Were
you interested in politics for a long time? Is this something you always thought about maybe getting into as you continued to matriculate in your professional life?
Policy was always something that I was interested in. I was in Model UN when I was in high school. I was a bit of a nerd when it came to that type of stuff. And whether or not I worked on other people's campaigns, and it just everything kind of seemed to grow into the progression that brought me here. So I don't know that it was ever a plan to be a state rep, but everything just kind of fell into place.
Well, you mentioned that you've been here a short while, but that certainly hasn't held you back in terms of being involved in some pretty interesting legislation, sometimes controversial legislation, but things that I know you are very passionate about. And one of those things, probably one of the more high-profile issues that you've been involved with, is that whole Woodmansey case and the statutes regarding good time here in our state. What made you, first of all, get involved with that? And number two, tell us about what you're trying to achieve. Things seem to be moving along pretty swiftly legislatively regarding that particular topic.
Right. I had just been elected and started up at the State House when the news was released that that Woodmansey would be released out of jail after serving only 28 years of his 40-year sentence. He had had 1/3 of his time shaved off for essentially behaving himself in jail, not committing any infractions while he was there.
Now we should point out too that this particular criminal was charged and convicted of a most heinous type of crime. It was a very, very vicious crime against a child, correct?
Right. In 1975, he kidnapped and murdered 5-year-old Jason Foreman. And his family didn't know what came of him for several years until they discovered that this neighbor of theirs was actually the murderer. When his early release was announced, as you can imagine, my community was incredibly upset about this. It actually happened streets away from where I live with my then 5-year-old daughter. So it impacted my community, it impacted me personally. We had to do something about it. It just didn't seem that justice had been served when someone guilty of committing that type of crime could be released so quickly. So we got together with the Attorney General, Senator Sue Sosnowski and I did, and he introduced a piece of legislation last year. It was controversial, as you said. It was a very difficult piece of legislation. It didn't go very far last year, so at the end I kind of got the sense that we needed to do more and created the Criminal Justice Oversight Commission, or reinstated the Criminal Justice Oversight Commission, to spend the following year looking at the issue. So after many meetings that I attended and participated in, we drafted a new version of a bill.
And where does it stand right now? Where is it at currently?
I'm very happy to say that it passed the House floor last night with a vote of 69-1. And it's going back to the Senate now, where I expect that it will be passed and signed by the governor shortly. So not something that I was terribly familiar with when I started as a freshman representative, but you know, I've learned a lot. I've worked very hard on this piece of legislation in particular over the last year and a half, and it gives me great pride to say that it passed so overwhelmingly.
And without getting too inside baseball or too particular in terms of all of the legal jargon,
Yeah.
how will it most change our law when it takes full effect?
Sure.
How will it work specifically?
Sure. So one of the big issues that one of the big hurdles we had to overcome last year was the idea of constitutionality. We had to make sure that it only impacted criminals who committed their crime after the effective date. So if someone were to go out on the 4th of July, kidnap and murder, they would then be accountable to these new rules. And what they do are eliminate all good time. So any passive credit that a prisoner has previously accrued, they're no longer eligible for it if they've committed murder, attempted murder, first-degree sexual assault, first and second-degree child molestation, and kidnapping a minor with serious intent, so sexual assault intent. So they're no longer able to passively lessen their time in prison. They have to participate in education credits or merit credits, which are rehabilitative type services, and industrial credits. They have to work on becoming better able to be released back in society.
Doing something positive, essentially, versus
Absolutely.
just not getting into trouble.
Absolutely.
Is that overly simplified?
It really isn't. It was that basic. People were not getting justice when they were victims of crimes. And now, you know, we're making the prisoners, I think, better able to be reunited with our society and be re-entered into our society.
And refresh my memory, where is Mr. Woodmansey today?
Right. As I mentioned, this all started when it was announced he was being released, and he has decided to commit himself to a mental institution. So, you know, while we were lucky in this particular case that he was not released back into the general population, he self-committed. We have to be able to look forward for future criminals and make sure that they will leave on terms ready to return.
Well, what if he hadn't done that? Would he have just been, that's it, it's over, he's back out in society?
That could have happened, except there were significant signs that he was not mentally capable of returning to society. So had he not self-committed, would have undergone a likely state committal.
Well, you know, first of all, congratulations on that
Thank
legislation.
you.
I know a lot of people watching this show right now were as outraged as you when they heard of this particular case, because it was so devastating to this family, and the crimes committed were so egregious and so vicious and vile. That you're to be congratulated on that. I'm going to shift gears right into a second real controversial thing that's been going on in our state, and maybe you can shed some light on it, because I know very early on in your time here, you've called for more accountability for tax programs and people that benefit from preferential treatment with tax programs here in our state. What do you make of this 38 Studios debacle? I mean, it's just an absolute horrible story.
It is.
Everybody's concerned about it. You've been concerned about this type of thing for some time. First of all, just give us an overview as to what do you make of this situation? And again, there are still a lot of unanswered questions, I know, but what do you take away from this situation?
I was not a supporter of this loan guarantee when it was proposed. I felt that to put so many of our eggs in the basket of one startup company was dangerous. I thought that it wasn't a good idea. I think we need a little more scrutiny when it comes to these types of treatments, and we we need to make sure that the decisions that we're making fit into a comprehensive economic development plan. What we need to do is figure out a comprehensive strategy and then stick to it. I'm afraid that too many times we're developing these deals without a larger context. And one of the bills that, actually two of the bills that I've put in this year kind of, I think, help the state to focus in on those types of deals. So to really begin to have an economic development plan, figure out a strategy, and then hold these programs, the people who receive these programs, accountable. I have this book here before me. It's the 2010 Tax Expenditure Report. It's a pretty thick report here detailing the types of special preferential treatment that we give to individuals, to corporations, to industries. They're not all bad, but the problem is we don't give them enough scrutiny. Now, this bill that I'm putting forward would add that scrutiny. It wouldn't directly hit on the 38 studios. What had happened, that loan guarantee, that was something that was outside of our purview in this particular area. But one thing that it has brought to light is the use of the film and tax credit.
Yeah, as if the situation isn't bad enough. Kurt Schilling and his company comes back to the state of Rhode Island and then now wants to get tax credits.
Right, using state funds. So the way, let's talk about this motion picture tax credit. We have, 238 different preferences that exist. In my bill, they would all have to have a stated purpose. They would have to tell us exactly what their expectations are, and this happens to have it. It has not only a stated purpose, but it has immediate and long-term objectives. It has a cap. It has $15 million. Most of these 238 that are in this book don't. It says when they have to be used, within 3 years. At first look, this is a perfectly written tax expenditure, but even the best written ones have problems, and they still need to be overlooked. Currently, we don't look at these. We write them into tax code, we spend the money through our tax code, and we don't give them another look. We need to evaluate these on a regular basis. The problem that is being uncovered now through this 38 studio debacle is that they're using the state fund to qualify for this additional credit. They're looking to get up to $14 million of additional state credit using no outside money. So they haven't engaged any other outside entities to pay for their production of their film and TV credit. And we're going to give them a tax break for spending the money that we've given them. We need to look at these comprehensively. We need to look at them often. So what my bill would do is to, every 5 years, they would sunset. It would have a separate part in House Finance. We would have a separate subcommittee exclusively dealing with this. And we would have to provide a line of intent. So as I said, the motion picture tax credit has a stated purpose, but only 7% of these do. And that's a problem. Another real shocking piece of data is that while 31% of them have reliable data on which to evaluate them, only 40% have, quote, no reliable data from which to derive an estimate. There's no data on 40% of these to see if the money that we're spending through the tax code is actually working for the state. So my bill would end that. It would make it so that we reviewed them and that we gave them that intent.
Well, I can't imagine you getting much resistance to your legislation. I mean, is anybody going to think that we shouldn't be paying a little closer attention to what's going on here?
It's unfortunate that this has brought it to light, and maybe the silver lining to the 38 studios will be that we now take this as a moment to go and comprehensively and thoughtfully review. We're talking about $1.67 billion that it's contained in this book. 75 million is a lot for 38 studios, but imagine how many more disasters are waiting within this book that we haven't yet uncovered.
And there's no question that the state and you folks in the General Assembly have a real role to play in economic development. And having, earmarked a certain number of dollars of our state budget to help companies or to attract business to Rhode Island is certainly a noble cause.
Right.
But you have to wonder about this whole 38 studios thing. Is it your understanding, too, that they've laid off all the employees. Are they essentially out of business now?
It doesn't appear that there's much left. I heard the news, we're taping here on Friday afternoon, and Thursday evening that news broke. Doesn't seem like there's much left, and at this point we are faced with two options. We can either spend the $112 million that it's going to cost to cover these bonds as the state. We can absorb that somehow, I don't know how, or we can default on them, and that's going to hurt our long-term economic forecast. So we have two really awful decisions. We've got to choose between those two really awful things, and I don't know which is best. I think we still are finding more things out.
Well, it seems like your legislation will set the stage for futures and maybe preventing something like this from happening again.
That is my hope.
But do you think Kurt Schilling needs to be more forthcoming with the General Assembly, the administration, and the citizens of Rhode Island to say, hey, why don't you once and for all tell us exactly what went wrong here and where did all the money go?
I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And I don't think that's going to help us out of this situation. I think what we have to really focus on now is how to best get out of this. We've got a budget that we're about to pass in the next few weeks, and we've got a plan for how we're going to get ourselves out of this and how we're going to get ourselves out of the hole that we're in and onto better times.
Well, we all have our fingers crossed, but all of us are, as you folks in the General Assembly are, as shocked by this situation and the outcome so rapidly going south. It's really, really unfortunate. As we continue to talk with you as a member of the House of Representatives, and particularly the area that you represent, fishing is certainly an important part of the economy in your area. You had some legislation, a bill that was approved by the House earlier this year, that addressed what I am told is a serious problem. It's called pair trawling.
Right.
Now, until I was prepping for this show, I wasn't really familiar with what pair trawling was. I wanted to give you an opportunity, Representative Tanzi, to explain that and why that is a dangerous thing for our fish habitat and the fishing industry in our state.
Sure. This practice of pair trawling is when two boats go out together and they tow a single massive net between the two of them, and they can cover a very wide swath of the ocean while doing this. It's an incredibly efficient method. The boats search for the schools of herring because herring tend to travel in schools like this, and they can scoop up anywhere between 600,000 and 1 million pounds of fish at a time, and that can be great. The problem is, we're the only state in the Northeast that allows this practice. So I brought a chart along with me, and if you take a quick look at it, last year when this happened, we had, without pair trawling in our waters, the fishing season opened, we had a nice gradual and then a steadying out of how many fish were caught. And it gave our fishermen work year-round. So our processors were receiving fish year-round. Our fishermen were out on the water catching these fish year-round. This is the way that we want to have our economy work, right? We want to make sure that people have the ability to go out every day and fish, absolutely. So this year we introduced for some reason, pair trawlers decide to come in. They realize that they can. They come into our state waters and they fish. And I'll direct your eyes to this blue line, which was this year. It gobbled up our quota. Opening day is January 1st. By February 20th, the entire quota was shut down. So our fishermen now have no more herring to catch for the rest of the year. Our processors have nothing more to process for the rest of the year. And the worst part about it is that fish, when they're catching 1 million pounds at a time, we don't have that type of capacity within our state. So it's all being caught within our waters and being trucked out of state.
Other places.
Other places. So our industry lost out on entire seasons worth of fishing.
And have you talked to any of the environmentalists? Does it create any problem in terms of our overall population? Is it dangerous in terms, and again, I'm no expert in this sort of thing. But
and that would be a first concern for anyone. But interestingly, enough, it's not causing the herring to be overfished. That has a very specific meaning. The species is existing, it's thriving, it's doing well. This isn't going to have irreparable harm on the level of fish that are available out there next year. It just means that this year there's nothing left for our fishermen to catch and our processors to work with.
So that was approved by the House?
It was, and what this did was it banned pair trawling within state waters for 1 year. And what our hopes are is that the DEM, who is most adept at working with these types of things, that would give them enough time, it would take the pressure off of them to be able to create their own regulations, so that people outside of the state who are performing this will know without a doubt that next year there will be no pair trawling. It would give our fishermen the security of knowing that no matter what, there will be no one else pair trawling in the waters as was the case this year. Unfortunately, it did not make it to the Senate side. My fingers are crossed that DEM can get these regulations in place to give us a season starting January 1st. Mm-hmm. I'm most certain that they can. This really was an insurance policy to let the fishermen from out of state know, we're closed for pair trawling, and to give our in-state fishermen the peace of mind to know that they'll have a full season next year.
You and your colleagues right now are putting the finishing touches on the budget, finalizing our budget for the fiscal year. You have to be pleased as, again, a rather younger member of the General Assembly, that your whole concept and proposal for combined reporting is being utilized as part of this process. Tell our audience why this is significant, why you were for it in the first place, and why this is important to the budgetary process.
Without a doubt. And yes, I was pleased that this study was included in last year's budget. It's something I've been working on prior to even my time as an elected official. What combined reporting would level the playing ground, right? Or the playing field. So we've got, in my district alone, a local pharmacy on one corner, and maybe 200 yards away, we've got a large multi-state, multinational pharmacy. And these two have to compete, right? They're going for the same exact customers, we're looking for the same market in the same neighborhood. The problem is that through something called combined reporting, the large multi-state is able to hide their profits in other states, mm-hmm. And not have to pay their full share of taxes because they perform these complicated tax...
creative bookkeeping.
Creative bookkeeping is absolutely one way of putting it, and we want to close that book in Rhode Island. We want to be able to let the mom and pop shop who's paying all of their taxes be on the same playing field as that multi-state pharmacy is. They're both valuable to the state of Rhode Island. Both of these entities are. We don't want to lose anyone's business, but we want to make sure that the smaller business is able to survive by closing that loophole.
In one paragraph or less, what did you make of the governor's overall budget proposal?
I'm glad we get a shot at it. I'm glad that he proposes and that we change just to start.
Oh yeah, you certainly get a shot at it.
And I think for my community in particular, the tax that was proposed on rentals would have been devastating. I think it really, I've had far more people contact me about that than anything else so far. Narragansett and South Kingstown are two vacation communities, and we're not talking about people who are coming from, Minnesota to rent houses. Most of the people who come down to Narragansett and rent down in Scarborough are people who live within our state. So if it were, taxing those who are coming here, it still wouldn't have been a great thing, but the fact that we're taxing our own residents such a high percentage, I'm grateful that the speaker came out immediately and said that that wasn't someplace that he was willing to take the state. And the other thing that I heard an awful lot about was the 10% on the meals and beverage,
right.
Raising that from 8% to 10%. And while I love the goal that the governor had of using that money to fully fund education, which I think is an incredibly important thing to do in the state of Rhode Island, I think we do need to make that investment in education. I just don't think that putting that burden on restaurants is the way to do it.
Well, and the speaker agrees with you there too.
Absolutely, I'm grateful for that.
Because again, tourism's a big part of your community, and again, that would have been tough on the restaurateurs and people that are in that, that are trying to attract that tourism and conference, that conference dollar.
Yeah.
I guess congratulations too are certainly in order. You were recently honored by the YWCA of Northern Rhode Island as a rising political star. And that has to make you feel pretty good, especially when you're relatively new to this political business. For them to single you out and call you a rising political star, that's quite a compliment.
I fear I may be blushing. It was a surprise, and it was a wonderful surprise. It is awarded to people who are just beginning their careers, and that type of recognition has made the work that I've done in these preceding 2 years all worth it.
Well, and they held this celebration called Women Holding Office Celebration. Maybe you can be a role model for other young women to look at getting involved, motivating them, serving as a mentor, if you will, to getting involved in the process.
Absolutely. That was the best part about it. When I received the award, I brought my 6-year-old daughter up on stage with me, and we looked out into the room together, a sea of faces, mostly women, and we sat back down, and she was just thrilled and hugging me and saying how great it was, and she said, "There's so many women here, Mama." And to see, for her, from her perspective, to see all of these women being honored for the work that they have done, it was great. It really was.
In the last 30 seconds, how have the first 2 years been for you? Has it been what you expected?
I don't think anyone can know what to expect. I think one of the, it's hard to sometimes get 74 other people on board with you. I've enjoyed my time up here. I love the one-on-one constituent type things that I get to do. When someone calls me and says they're having a problem getting through to a state agency, they need help with their unemployment check, or they need help, with whatever it is, and I'm able to pick up the phone, and I feel like I have the bat line. I can just pick that up, and I can get someone to return their phone call, and that has been.
It makes all those long hours worth it.
It really does.
When you can cut through the red tape for somebody. Yep. Well, I have to tell you, Representative Tanzi, it's a treat for us to have a rising political star on Straight from the Gavel. You've been most accommodating. You've been involved in some very interesting legislation. You work very hard. You're very passionate. And I thank you for being so generous with your time today and sharing your thoughts with us.
It has been my pleasure, Dave. Thank you.
And of course, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Dave Barley. Remember, you heard it straight from the Gavel.